to our podcast. I'm Shanika.
And I'm Caitlin.
And welcome to Get Checkered. So you're probably wondering what this podcast is about. Well, we recently fell in love with F1, and we wanted to share our newfound love with everyone. However,
we know we're newbies.
we're going to make mistakes.
But okay, as Shanika said it earlier, this is going to be full of uneducated hot takes. But my friends, in the near future, they will become educated.
Exactly. This is also a way for us to just have some fun with it, because we were looking at the landscape of F1 media and just everyone takes it a little bit too seriously. So we figured this would be an easy entry for most people, hopefully.
Yeah, and we're going to make it fun. Okay, so there are no other female-led F1 podcasts in brackets that we could find. Not a lot of podcasts helping the newbies out there. And we're giving it a nice Canadian touch. We're waking up nice and early for all these races right now.
Exactly. So what you can expect is some post F1 race rundowns. Very tired. We will be very exhausted. And also just some other things, whether our opinions on shows like Drive to Survive, which we'll get into later.
Love it.
Our obsession with Toto Wolff.
Love him.
He's also a Capricorn. And many more things.
Oh, yep. There will be lots of sprinkles of horoscopes and astrology in here as well, just a heads up.
So if you are down for the ride, stay tuned for the rest of our episodes.
Yeah, we're going to try this. Hey, Shanika, how did we get into F1? Can you elaborate on our love for Drive to Survive?
Of course. So to take a step back, I fell in love with it because of Caitlin, as most things in my life. But I was at her place, COVID times, rough. We drank a lot.
What else do you do in COVID?
Just the two of us, and I stayed over, and the next day she was, while we were making breakfast, I think we went on a bread run.
Yeah.
And then she was like, hey, do you want to watch this show? It's called Drive to Survive. And, I'm hungover, and I don't know if I even want to do that. But at this point, it's like, okay, what do I have to lose? I get to spend time with someone I care about. She turned it on, and I was obsessed. I slammed through all 3 seasons in a week. But Caitlin, how did you get into it?
Ran out of other stuff I was watching on Netflix. I had a healthy little binge fest there with quite a few series. So F1 comes up. I'm like, you know what? It could be really cool. I should know about this sport. I grew up really with soccer. That was my thing. Mm-hmm. Never paid attention to F1 really. And I saw memes of this, comparing the guys that are into F1 in school to the horse girls.
Oh.
So it's very niche, growing up, especially here in Calgary, especially. We don't have F1 near us, so no. Tried it out, and I think the first episode is it starts out with Daniel Ricciardo, and I'm like, love it. I love it.
And I think that's what the series does so well. So did you start on season 1 or season 3?
So season 3, and I'm like, this is not right. What are they talking about the past 2 seasons? I was pretty quick to get back onto season 1.
And went backwards?
Yep.
I did the same thing, because I finished kind of where you and I started. So I think one of the things that Netflix does really well, especially for people that aren't into F1, is that with all of the super sexy slow motion and all the great cuts and the high production, it does make it seem just so much more larger than life. And those little touches really help.
Mm-hmm. They drew us in.
Yeah. And I think those one-on-one interviews are so important, because you get to learn about F1, but also the people that make F1, which is so important in the sport, because, I didn't know that there was literally, a handful of seats that people can
knew nothing about it.
Exactly. And then get shuffled around. Do you think, was there any bad side to Drive to Survive?
Yeah, the money side pisses me off so much on the inside. It's just it's such a rich sport. I get why, but it's if you don't have money, you won't make it, and that pisses me off. So.
Yeah. And I think that's one thing that Netflix did really well, was really making it apparent, like, these people have money. And obviously there are drivers that have come up with less than others, but it's definitely a sport that just has so much money. And I work in marketing, so just to see their cars and their outfits just so heavily branded, that's hundreds of millions of dollars.
It's a sign. It's what you're saying.
Just in advertising. So it's a little intense.
But I think, like, yeah, with Netflix centering a lot of their story on the people, like, great. Because they're great people, it seems like. Like, hilarious, some great backstories, some very interesting relationships. Like, it's all great. I love it.
Right? I agree. I will say so our favorite is from the Netflix show, of course, is Gunther.
Gunther Steiner.
From the lovely Haas team. And the way that they portrayed him and cut him is honestly something out of, I would say, a Disney movie, but it's not even a Disney movie. It's like, I would envision like the villain in The House Bunny, but there is no villain in The House Bunny. Like, I don't know, but that, I thought the way that they...
Yeah, he's like, he's a funnier, a bit more outspoken, what's that, janitor from Harry Potter? That's what he reminds me of.
I don't...
With the cat.
She talks about Harry Potter. So the only reason why I ever watched Harry Potter was because Caitlin made me watch Harry Potter. So I actually have... I only know Harry.
So I go through a lot of shows and only the good ones make it to Shanika, okay?
But yeah, I think that the way that they portrayed him was really interesting. Because, I mean, Haas is just... We'll get into all the deets. But it's just, you're watching a team essentially implode and...
It's just like, I don't know, okay, it is what it is, I need to talk to their boss. Like, yeah, I mean, like, you're not wrong.
That's exactly it. I will say, though, one of the things that looking at F1 I never even thought about is just the speed that they're driving at. You know that they're driving fast. But to have Netflix film the season where Grosjean had that just totally horrible accident put me in just like a black hole of just like reading everything about the safety and what the FIA is doing. It's insane to think that if that halo wasn't there, like, he likely wouldn't have survived. And the fact that Netflix caught it, I think, really just shows how far the sport's gone. And then also that it is also very much a sport. Like, they're driving so freaking fast. And
like, the consequences are just so severe.
Exactly. And that probably is why, I mean, I don't know if this is the same for you, but watching the Netflix show, I mean, there was a few that I loved. I love, like, Lewis Hamilton's very leveled personality. And a few of the other drivers. I really like Pierre Gasly. Watching him win Monza, I've rewatched that clip like 5 times on my own.
Over the course of this podcast, you will see who Shanika likes and you will see who Caitlin likes. They're not the same.
But it's also, you have to respect all these drivers because they're getting out there and they could die. Yeah. And it's hard to have total, complete favorites and be like, oh, I ride or die for this person. One, because even watching Drive to Survive, they all shuffle teams. Like, pretty a lot. And then also they're just risking their life. So I find it really hard to come up with a favorite. Another team on there. What did you think about Renault and just their 3-season story arc?
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't know. I'm totally indifferent to Renault.
Really?
Yeah. I don't know. Nothing special in my heart. What about you?
I felt for Cyril in that it was a press conference with, oh my gosh, is it Horner?
Oh, the Red Bull guy?
Yeah. And they were announcing that they weren't going to use Renault engines anymore. And he was like, oh, it's fine. Renault has money. Cyril said that. And it was like, like, it's not a good sign, right? If any sort of car, I would assume, is just no longer using your engine.
Yeah. I mean, like, the only thing I liked about Renault in the whole storyline from Netflix was when Daniel Ricciardo said, if I get on the podium, Cyril has to get a tattoo. A tattoo! I loved it. And then he got on the podium. It's like, and then they were helping Cyril design his tattoo. I love that.
I wonder if we, in the next season, get to see that tattoo. But probably not, because obviously Cyril is...
Yeah, he's not there, right?
He's been given the boot, so I'd be curious to see how they cover that. I also will say, with the Netflix show, another bad thing is that they didn't cover... I mean, you can't cover all of the teams, but there is quite a few teams that we didn't get as much of a deep dive in on.
Yeah, and I think, like, that translates to people like you and me, like, we're playing, not really like playing favorites, but like we just have so much more exposure to certain teams and racers.
Yeah.
That is like, that's going to be a lot of our time, probably on this podcast, talking about them.
Yeah, and not knowing so much about the other ones, because like we said, our foray into this has just been Drive to Survive. So, I mean, I wish they showed, like, I don't know anything about Alfa Romeo,
no.
Or did they rebrand this year and come back as that? Like, I don't know.
Me neither. All I know is like their Italian driver, he's our age, and you know what? I was going to say this in a different section of the podcast, but it's like anyone born in '93, you're kind of starting off in a pretty good age in my book. You can lose a lot of marbles pretty fast. He doesn't, yeah.
But yeah, I think that's one of the negatives. Is there anything else that you would say wasn't so great about the show?
Like, definitely, we know they have to play up certain relationships.
Yeah, and like dramatize it.
Yeah,
more.
totally.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That's, yeah, it's interesting, like, to see if we can formulate our own opinions on those relationships as we start watching more.
Yeah, and then also basing it off their interviews and stuff. I had no idea that they have. Honestly, I had no idea that F1 was just this big.
You know, like, we knew it was big, but like
not
the biggest.
Yeah, had no idea. Which is kind of, I mean, we do live in Canada, but we are in Calgary, so it's quite separated from all that. Even though there is a Canadian Grand Prix, it's all the way in Montreal, which honestly, if you know anything about Canadian history, feels sometimes like a different country within itself. So.
It's like, okay, so for perspective, you guys, if you're not in Canada, it's a 5-hour plane ride from Calgary to Montreal. You're covering like a solid distance. Yeah, we just didn't grow up exposed to F1, I guess, over here.
Yeah, and it just took you finding something on Netflix that you were like, might as well
to give it a shot.
And then not strong-arming me, but it's definitely great. Do you have any reasons why, like, you've fallen in love with it so hard, aside from the fact that...
I think it's the people, 100%.
Yeah?
I freaking love the characters in this sport. And, like, okay, mind you, yeah, it's not the whole team, and we need to be respectful of the fact that it's, like, it's a team effort of these, and we really only see the athletes and the team principals, but they're fucking fantastic. Oh, and by the way, this might be a rated, like, E podcast. I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, we have potty mouths. Yeah, I would say it's the people for sure, but then also just the fact that they can drive. You know me. I cannot drive at all. I am the worst driver. So to have these people that can drive so well and so fast, which is just my dream, I've just immediately put them on a pedestal that they could probably never reach.
What's the fastest you've ever driven?
I think, like, not very fast. Like, I would say maybe 130 kilometers an hour.
Damn. Okay.
Yeah. How about you?
I hit 200.
How did you hit 200?
It was on the Autobahn.
I mean, that's different.
Yeah. Was I terrified? I was going to
the fact that you were in a car that could go that fast, I mean, I feel like my Honda Civic would just not make it.
I mean, maybe not. Now that we've kind of been over, like, our foray, why we got into F1, it's time to talk about some fun stuff. Who is your favorite driver? Who is your favorite team?
And we don't have any favorites. But between the two of us, we definitely lean, I would say, like, toward, like, two different groups. We basically cover everyone.
Yeah, we're very different in our preferences.
Preferences, for sure. So, who are we going to start off with?
Okay, we're starting with Mercedes. So, not saying Mercedes is my favorite. I do lean towards German engineering. That's just the way I am.
So, Caitlin's background, she is an engineer. So,
yeah. We did a trip to Germany, and we didn't visit Mercedes. We visited Audi and BMW, and, like, it was pretty cool. So, We visited Red Bull too, actually. That was really good. But yes, anyway, so I lean towards German engineering. We will leave it at that. And also, my favorite team principal is, and probably will always be, Toto Wolff. So we'll leave that. Okay, no, we're going to start with 7-time world champ.
Yeah, Lewis Hamilton. So again, this is just first impressions off the show and some like interviews and stuff we've seen on YouTube. I really like him. And I know in the F1 community, he gets this rap for being... I don't know, like arrogant, but is it just because he's just really great at what he does? Like, I don't know. But I think he's really great. I also think the fact that he has this really interesting come-up story being the only black kid at these tracks growing up, as much as people say that won't affect you, it totally does, because a lot of the time you can only believe you can do something when you see someone doing it. So for him to just actually do it without seeing anyone in that role is really incredible. Mm-hmm. Also, we stand the fact that he's vegan. I'm not vegan, but, you know, respect a guy that is. And he loves dogs. Love Roscoe. As much as I love dogs. But I think that the, like, mild temper and just, like, temperament, I really like.
Oh, yeah. And I really like the fact that he has such a positive attitude from what I see. He's, like... always helping. Well, so after this race, Imola, we'll talk about it, but like he was sending like Instagram comments to Lando Norris and George Russell, just being to these young guys, just being like, okay, this happened, like move on, good job recognizing what you did, like let's race. And I'm like, I appreciate that. They need to hear that from their idol, right?
Yeah, I agree.
So I love his personality so far from what I've seen.
Yeah.
Yeah, him and Toto talked about horoscopes in one YouTube interview that Shanika sent me, and I died. They're both Capricorns, and FYI, I'm Capricorn too, so I'm like, can I join your club, please?
Yeah, and of course, I'm just like, wow, of course I'm surrounded by earth signs. We'll learn more about all that stuff later. Next up on the Mercedes team is...
we got, how do you pronounce it? Bottas. Okay, what do you got to say about Bottas?
Okay, again, this is first impressions. I just feel bad for him, which is terrible to say. To be in F1 means you are one of the best in the entire world, but to also be behind Hamilton, it would kill me.
Yeah, and I think it kind of is silently killing him.
Like, you're always second to him. And I know that there's this whole, like, second driver thing, but he is quite literally the second driver. Like, how, even if it's just both of them at the finish line or maybe a foot away, they're going to tell him to let Hamilton pass. And that just is a total gut punch. Like, I don't know how. I mean, but also, with that being said, he's quite strong to just continually...
Oh, yeah, no, I was going to say, like, he's got to be such a strong person to just keep rolling with the way things are.
100%. I know that he's a better man than I, because I could not. I think my ego would take a hit. But does your ego matter when you're making millions? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. I mean, if you're that close to being the best, though, it must be so tempting just to say, fuck it, I'm not gonna let him pass.
Yeah, and just screw over everyone. But then it's like, you screw over your team.
Yeah, and then you're not with the team probably the next season.
It's tough. That one's tough. But I'm hoping that, you know, as we dive into this, we can learn more about him as a driver and get more of his come-up story that we can share with everyone. So, yeah, because right now we just don't know enough. And then what we do know just makes me feel bad.
Yeah. So more to come about that.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah. Next up, we got our boy, Lando Norris. Lando. He's freaking funny, man. We said earlier, and definitely seen on Netflix, everyone else knows this too. It's not just a Shanika and I thing. But he's the future of McLaren. They know it.
Yeah.
He's young. He's so fun. Shanika's like, he really seems to understand the car. And I'm like, I love the fact that he wears a fucking like neon bucket hat just on the tarmac. And it's like, is it tarmac?
Like on the paddock? Is that what you're saying?
I don't know.
See, these are things that we need to learn. We're using the wrong terms. Apologies.
Yeah, no, he's freaking funny. And he has a whole other, like...
world.
He has his world. His hobby is streaming.
Which is so great. And he only has, I checked today, like, on YouTube, because he does stream on Twitch, but then puts the videos up on YouTube, he only has like less than 300,000 followers and subscribers, so go subscribe to him. But it's nice to see that he has a personality outside of F1 and that he still just is this fun guy. So I don't know, he's one to watch for sure.
And actually, like, on this streaming note, I saw that he streams with, who is it, Charles Leclerc,
Yeah,
and
I know George.
Alex Albon.
Yeah, and George pops in every now and then.
George Russell. And oh my god, all of them are just hilarious. And just Charles is there one day and he was wearing a banana outfit.
You know, these are what they do.
See, like, this is some of the personalities. Love them.
Yeah,
right?
And it's good that you got the intro from Drive to Survive, and now you get to see them on other platforms and
everywhere on other platforms.
Yeah, and get to know them in a different light. Who else is on McLaren right now?
Our boy, Danny Ricciardo.
Oh, right. I forgot Danny's
he
now
went
on
over from
Renault. I totally forgot. Okay, Caitlin's obsessed with Danny Ricciardo. I feel like I can't say
He's just so funny. Okay? He's got such a good sense of humor. What did I write? Honey Badger. He's just the funniest thing. But it's true. He's what hooked me on Drive to Survive. I think that was a very good decision on Netflix's part to put him first.
Yeah, I agree with that, actually, because he's so personable, and you can tell that everyone in the paddock is like, okay, like the loudest person, the one that's always going to make fun of something is Danny. So I actually agree with that. I think he's great. I think the sad thing is, though, is like we want him to become
successful and
world champion.
Win a world championship. Is he, though?
I mean, we'll see this season,
yeah,
but it's just like, it's
we'll
tough
watching.
with just all these young kids coming up. But Danny's a fave. I actually think he has, I think he's years from retiring, but I think he has a great possibility. Like, he has a great personality that he could go into media. Could you imagine watching Sky News and having Danny Ricciardo be doing the interviews?
Everything. Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah. So he's also really great at overtaking, which I think is what he's known for, but just watching him do it was like very cool and also terrifying.
Okay, so we're gonna go over to our Ferrari drivers.
Sweet Charles and Carlos Sainz.
Sweet boy Charles, yeah.
Who do we start with? Do we start with Charles?
Yeah.
Okay, Charles, again, great personality, great driver. I think that it's more so a team thing where I just don't get the best vibe from... I can't believe I just said vibe unironically. I hate myself for that. I apologize.
No, yeah, I feel that though.
Like Ferrari just, and I don't know if it's just because of the team principle or something, but it just, they seem to be building a better car this year, but it's like, I don't know. I think they are trying to build like this Ferrari whatever team around Charles. But I hope they just give him a good enough car because he's clearly a good driver. And we saw that with Imola, which we'll talk about later. But do you have any opinions on Charles?
I think I'm just gonna add that like he seems quiet sometimes, but you know he's like a silent killer. Like he gets in the car and he's just like, fucking, I'm gonna take a bitch out if I want to. get in my way, you gone. That's what I see from Charles Leclerc. And then he comes out and he wears a banana outfit.
Yeah, so he like he takes it seriously, but then also doesn't take himself too seriously, which is good because the sport just seems very intense. It blows my mind though how young these guys are.
Yeah. It makes us feel
like ancient, and then also at the same time like a weird mix of, well, what were we doing when we were their age?
We were drinking a lot.
Yeah, it was like we were 20. It was a fun time. And then Carlos Sainz. So he joined Ferrari this year, leaving McLaren. Yeah. I mean, I think it makes sense that he left McLaren, but my opinions on him, he just seems to work really hard. Yeah. And like to be very involved with the engineers on the car and just very in it, which, I mean, maybe it comes from the fact that he comes from a motorsport family because his dad used to drive, but he just seems really in it. I don't know. Again, like it comes back to this idea that I want all of them to succeed, which I know like can't happen, but I hope he does.
Yeah. I see Sainz as top of the pack, but not the top.
Do you say what's the phrase? It's like the king of like the middle grid or something, the top grid. I don't know.
There's best of the rest.
There's best of the rest. You think he's best of the rest?
But no, I think he's above the rest. Like he's still really good, but he's just not going to be top.
He's not going to be top. We hope we're wrong.
Yeah,
prove
us wrong, Carlos.
All these drivers prove us wrong. What team's next?
We have Red Bull.
Red Bull.
Mad Max. First, Max Verstappen.
I mean, the kid he's so talented, and if anyone's gonna give Lewis a run for that streak he's got going, it is Max. Mm-hmm. I think the one thing is that he is really young, and sometimes you can just see some anger flare up.
Yeah, you can literally like see the fury like leave his face.
Yeah, and you're like, okay, this is something. But he's just really talented, and I actually think in the coming years he'll have his pick of basically what team he goes to.
For sure. Next up, I'll let you talk about him. His teammate Sergio Perez.
I really like him. Caitlin is like about him, but I think the fact that he's been in F1 for a bajillion years, has still been able to retain a seat, whether it's like been paid for by someone else or whatever, and now to have him in a really good car, it's just exciting because he was the king of the middle grid. I'm probably saying all this wrong, but he was like always hitting number 4 or 5, and to have him in a car that can actually get him past that is really exciting for...
Yeah, but is he gonna get more than 4 or 5?
I mean, Imola was like not his best time, but he did qualify P2.
He did.
Imola, so yeah. I think he's more than capable, and I think that since he's so seasoned, that can play in his favor if he can just like remain cool-headed, obviously, because I know that him and is it Esteban Ocon, they had some issues. I thought. Maybe not. I could be lying. This is maybe how rumors start. But I thought they did. So, yeah, I really like him. I'm excited to see what he does this season. I think he'll do great.
Yeah. You know how I mentioned earlier on the podcast, like, the thing about F1 that pisses me off is, like, the money side? Well, I mean, Sergio Perez is, like, a prime for that, for me. It's just, like... And Netflix set it up this way to be like, Esteban Ocon should have kept the seat based on merit, but Sergio Perez kept it based on money. And it's like, that kind of set me off. He's still a good driver, but I can see that being the truth if he can bring money for sponsorship. And then you see it with some of the other drivers on the grid too, and I'm just like, why? Why it gotta be like that? Like, I know why, but it pisses me off.
Oh my gosh. We'll get her. Well, she'll come around.
Anyways, yeah. We got who's Alpine?
So formerly Renault. Yeah. Who's on it's Esteban Ocon and
yeah.
Editing Shan here. We pronounced Fernando Alonso's name wrong like 6 times before we actually nailed it. I feel bad, so I'm just going to cut it out and put this in instead. Hopefully we don't screw it up in the future. Enjoy the rest of the podcast. Oh, my Lord. I am not surprised that he's back because I think... Sorry, not Renault. Alpine, they need the points. And, like, who better than a former...
world champ.
Yeah. But it also... I mean, again, we don't know that much about him, but when I mention him to people that know F1 in my own circles, they're like, yeah, he's a bit of a hothead. So, like, just sit and wait and watch and see what happens. So, I don't know.
I guess we will see. Next up, we're going to talk about Aston Martin. And first one on our list, Lance Stroll, Mr. Canadiano.
So, yes, he is Canadian. Do we claim him? Not sure. We'll keep you posted. Again, all of these people are good drivers. Like, he has to be a good driver to be in F1. I think the money thing just brings up a big question of, like, will he always have that seat? Mm-hmm. Like, will he always have somewhere to be because his dad will buy whatever, I think is the big question. And Obviously, he can podium. We saw that in the Netflix series. So I'm curious to just watch him throughout this year and get to know him as a driver, I guess, aside from just like being a rich kid.
Yeah. And I guess we will see. His teammate this year, Sebastian Vettel.
Oh, so what do you think about Sebastian, Caitlin?
Okay, so he is super funny in interviews. I respect that. He's like the one to kind of break the awkward silences in the interviews, even if he just says something more awkward, but I'm like, whatever.
I hope that he does well at Aston Martin. I mean, so far it's like not looking the best, but you know, he's still racing and he's been in it forever. So
yeah, it seems like he's having a good time.
Yeah, exactly. And which is so insane to think about that these, like, especially Sebastian Vettel, he could retire. Alonso Fernando, they could, he did retire, but they're coming back. Obviously, the money's either really good or they, like, actually enjoy being out there, which is insane to me. Because
just casually going for a drive at 340 kilometers per hour.
Yeah,
vroom, vroom.
Exactly. Potentially could die at any moment. But yes, I am also a Sebastian Vettel stan. There are great compilations of him on YouTube that you can just power through, and he seems to sometimes be the only one having a good time.
I love it though. Okay, we're going to talk about Haas, but we're going to be talking about one driver and the team principal instead.
Yeah, so I think that the F1 community knows just the sexual harassment stuff tied to Mazepin, and you know,
there's no room for that on our podcast.
Yeah, we're not going to platform anyone, even if no one listens to this, but who is like that. So we won't talk about him. But Haas,
we got. We'll talk about we got Mick Schumacher,
who is again new. Like I think this is his first F1.
I think so. Yeah.
But Haas is just. Is this a year where they just try to get through the year? Is like my big question.
Isn't that like every year?
I mean, from the Netflix series, it definitely looked like it's been like 4 years of this, which is like really, really tough. But it's sad to see, honestly, like a team struggle so much.
Mm-hmm. They do say, like, in Haas, from the Netflix show, they're saying like they're a big family, right? Like people don't really leave Haas.
Yeah.
New people don't come in. They've really got to know each other and they're a big family. And I respect that.
Yeah, I think there's something to be said if you're struggling with money but are still able to keep people employed and keep people nice and close. Like, that's a good thing. Yeah. But I just don't know about the team. And then with Mick, he's just so... I don't want to say green because, again, they just drive so much. But he's also...
green to the F1 level,
yeah,
I think.
That's a good point. So
green as you can be with a dad that won it 7 times. But to actually feel it out for yourself, I think that's what he's getting out of his system this year.
It's just getting a feel for the track and maybe even just the insane schedule. They're working like 9 months out of the year. That's insane.
Okay, we're going to talk about Gunther Steiner.
Gunther. Okay, we've already alluded that we love the Netflix edit of him, which I think is maybe an unpopular opinion. Like, I feel like people probably don't like it.
I think, like, I almost got the feeling that some of the people in the paddock are probably like really annoyed with him a lot of the time. But it's like, since we don't have that direct conversation with him, we're not relying on him for anything, it's just fun to watch.
Yeah. But hopefully he can pull his team together, because it's like he might, like, will he have a job?
I seriously don't know how he's even stayed in this position with how they've been doing.
Seriously. No, that's a really good question, because it's like, if you're not doing... it's like they're not even doing not well, they're just doing so shit that it's like, what do you do? What do you do?
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. So I hope that they do interview him more throughout the season, because I feel like when we watched, and we'll talk about them all later, but just all the interviews that we did see were from like, you know, like Toto and everyone else versus like someone at Haas. So I hope we do hear from them, though.
Yeah, me too.
I mean, to get some perspective outside of Netflix.
Right? I wonder if they don't interview Gunther that often, because it's like, so you guys got 19 and 20. How you feeling?
I mean, you're right. Oh, Lord. But yeah, we'll watch and see.
He's one of our favorites, though. Okay, we got Williams quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe who we're going to spend more time talking about with Williams is George Russell.
Yeah.
So another youngin.
Another youngin, another one.
Lots of potential.
Tons of potential. Under Toto Wolff's management, I think, again.
Well, I mean, we think so for right now, but we'll get into that later.
And obviously very talented, just needed to get into F1. Mm-hmm. Likely won't stay at Williams long. But Williams obviously went through that giant change and has new management and new team principal. They have money.
Yeah, who knows what's going to happen with Williams.
Yeah, which is good. Like, I think a refresh was desperately needed, and hopefully they can turn a new page. But then joining him is another Canadian.
Oh, yeah! Nicholas Latifi.
Who...
We didn't really get exposure to him on Netflix, so we just don't know a lot about him.
Yeah, literally don't know anything about him.
Shanika knows that he came from money, though.
I do know that he came from money.
So that kind of puts him in my bad books already.
You have to come from money to do F1, I swear.
I mean, Lewis Hamilton proves otherwise.
True. I guess you're right. But, yeah, so I don't really know that much about him. I want to learn more about him. It just hasn't happened yet.
We'll celebrate his wins, if he has any.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Anyways, I don't know. We're like,
okay, we're going to go on to
AlphaTauri, which is honestly, I think, one of my, like, favorite teams.
You are totally an underdog person.
I am an underdog person. Yeah. I'd love to see them win.
So, okay, we have Gasly up first.
Yeah, so I think Pierre Gasly is extremely talented, and watching him go through the, like, rise and fall of everything that happened with Red Bull and to come back and win Monza and do as well as he has done, like, I think he's actually getting the most he can out of that car. And I'd love to learn more about AlphaTauri's, like, team principal, because I think he's doing a really good job. And then joining him this year is Yuki Sonoda, who is, again, someone that's super talented, really young, which, like, always freaks me out when I was young. But he did really well in all the Formula 2, Formula 3, and everything. He's been karting forever. I think this first year will be, like, interesting for him. You know, you're so green and so new to all of this, but I think he's definitely one to watch. I think that I really like this team. I don't know what it is. Caitlin, do you have any opinions on AlphaTauri?
I mean, no. Not paying much attention to them yet, but I agree with you. I think, like, Pierre Gasly, he's been through a lot.
Yeah.
And he's still finding strength to race as best as he can, and I respect that. Yuki Sonoda, I'm excited to see what he can bring to the table. I really think he's going to be like a little firecracker.
I know. I think that he's going to get, like, comfortable with the car, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, he's going to be passing all these people
beep, motherfucker.
Exactly. And they're all going to have to move aside for him. It's going to be great to see.
And then the last but not least, team Alfa Romeo.
Oh, right. So the team that we literally know absolutely nothing about.
Except Kimi Räikkönen is hilarious.
Kimi is he just doesn't know he's funny. And I think that's the best part, is that he just has no idea. And that it's not even, like, I don't even know if it's dry humor at this point. Like, I just feel like it's just who he is.
It's his personality. And he's just, like, he's not very expressive. And
yeah.
In certain situations, that can be very funny to onlookers.
Yeah, exactly.
Not laughing at him. Hugely respect him. Think he's hilarious.
Yeah. I'm excited to just see someone that's been in the sport for so long, still racing.
I hope that. So we're seeing Lewis Hamilton kind of mentor, like, the mindset of the younger drivers. I'm hoping Kimi can offer some mentorship to
advice,
them as
just
well.
anything.
Yeah.
I assume with Sebastian Vettel, I feel like he could probably offer something.
I hope they do. I don't know.
We don't know.
We only see what's on social media, really.
Yeah. Amen. And then who's the second driver? It's
Giovinazzi. I think that's how you pronounce it.
Yeah. Again.
Italian, driving an Italian car. I remember him saying he was stoked about that.
That's great.
Yeah.
We just don't know.
That doesn't happen often, I guess, no.
We just don't know anything about him.
Yeah. He was kind of, like...
Was it even mentioned in the Netflix show?
No.
Yeah. I was going to say, like, hopefully... I'm guessing that they're filming right now. I don't even know if they got picked up for another season. Apologies. I should have probably figured that out. So. But hopefully we can learn more about their team because like Kimmy's so great. So hopefully we can learn more about him.
I think it has to do with like the agreements these teams have with Netflix, or even if Netflix approaches them if they're interesting.
Yeah, that's a big thing for sure. It's like it makes sense the teams that are covered by the Netflix show for sure. And then also, is Netflix paying them is another question. Like, are they getting a cut of any sort of...
They do not need more money.
of any sort of royalty
no, they do not
anywhere.
Need more money.
All right. Okay. So that's our first real episode.
Yep. That's our attempt.
That's our attempt. We did it. I'm impressed.
Me too. And we're saying, okay, so we told you guys to get checkered at the beginning of the episode. We're going to tell you to stay checkered.
Yes.
At the end of the episode.
Yeah, and to follow us on our socials.
We're going to put a lot of freaking memes up.
Yeah, they will be everywhere. So if you check at Get Checkered on every platform, minus Facebook, because who's on Facebook anymore?
No, we're not.
You can see what we're posting, which will be meme heavy because we think that F1 is lacking when it comes to memes. So
it'll be fun. Come along for the ride.